Okay, what I'm looking for is a company who can build this web application. Basically, you're going to take what I've built in a spreadsheet and program it into a nice web application. Now, this is a calculator. It is not meant to store or save any data. Okay, so here's a little bit of background. Its users are those who try to hit nutritional macronutrient targets using food tracking apps or calorie counters or whatever means they have. For example, a person may want to target 40% of their calories from protein, 30% from fat, and 30% from carbohydrate. So their task is to either consume their food calories in that um, macronutrient composition or to create meals that meet that macronutrient composition. Now, this ServCalc app is what I call it, will take the macronutrient composition and food ingredient selection by the user, and it will then calculate the serving portions for them that will be spot on to their macronutrient target. Okay. So what I'm looking for is, a login page and a subscription section, and then instructions and relevant information page, and then we'll get into the calculator here. So the user will use two methods to enter their macronutrient composition information and to size their meal. They can use percentages or they can use grams. You'll have to program these buttons because if they want to use percentages, which is fine, these are calculations here that are used in the algorithm. So if they use grams instead, which is fine, then you will use these calculations in the algorithm that creates the serving portions. Okay. So you're going to have some logic up here that you'll create. So depending on which one they use, then you will use the appropriate calculations. Okay. All right. So your page is going to say size meal and enter macros. And so they're going to enter the grams of protein for this meal. So here we have 70 grams already entered. We'll just go with that. And then we enter the macronutrient percentages for this meal. In this case, we're going to do 30% of calories from protein, 30% from fat, and 40% from carbohydrate. So this meal is 933 calories. Okay. Now, the percentages need to add to 100%. If they don't, then they can't move on to the next step. So this would be disabled. Okay. Now, if they select to use grams, which is common for most people, then they enter the grams of protein for the meal, and then the grams of fat, and then the grams of carbohydrate. Okay. So once again, you're going to have to be able to program which one will be used in the algorithm. Okay. Let's move on. So we hit next. And now we're going to enter the ingredients for this meal. Now we're going to use the Fat Secret API nutritional database. It's very robust, and they offer that up for programmers and people who build apps. So this is not uncommon for them to work with us to make this happen. Okay. So the way ours is going to work, though, is we're going to have a section for protein. And what one would do is like click a plus button that would send them to a menu in which they would key in New York strip. All right. And a drop down menu would happen, and there'd be various forms of New York strip. They would select the one they want. And then they would enter or select the unit of measurement. In this case, I've got ounces. They would hit save, and then they would type in this case, Gulf shrimp. Various types of Gulf shrimp, if you will, would be in the drop down menu. They select the one that they want, select the unit of measurement, and then hit save. Once they've completed all the proteins for their meal, then they would do the carbohydrates and finally the added fats. Pretty simple, but all they're selecting is the food ingredient and the unit of measurement. Okay. Then they would just click next. And that brings us to the output. So the first thing we want to look at is, did our food selection meet our macronutrient target? And here we show that it did. Okay, we have a little variance table created, If I'm over or under on my protein, fat, or carbs, it will show up here. Likewise, the macronutrient percentages also show up here, and there's no variance. All right. Then we have an ingredient macronutrient composition table. So this just gives all the individual items and their protein, fat, and carbs in grams. It also provides the fiber and the calories. And so one could take a look and see how all the various food items came out in terms of their macro composition. Okay. And then finally, we have the calculated servings for this meal. Now, something you're going to need to program, and I've done it through the spreadsheet using math, and that is I can change these serving portions, and it's going to cause all these to recalculate while not impacting the macro composition. Okay. The way that works is right now I have the value of 1 in this column, and that's neutral. So mathematically, it doesn't impact the serving portion. But any value below 1 is going to decrease the portion, and any value above 1 will increase it. And I want those values to be in increments of 0.05. So you'll program a button like a plus minus or an up and down arrow, and they would just click on that, let's say plus, until they get the serving portion the way they want it. So let's do that real quick. So imagine on that plus, I'm going to click it 5 times. So that would be the equivalent of 1.25. And hit enter. And so you can see my serving portion changed. It went up, but the macro composition did not. So everything here recalculated. Okay. And I can always go back to neutral here. And then I can reduce the serving portion by going below 1. So again, imagine 5 clicks, this time on the minus button. So I'll put in here 0.75. And there you go. So we've reduced the New York strip, and then everything else recalculated. And as you can see, our macro composition is perfect. So any of these changes that occur are going to occur within the parameters of our macro composition. Okay, and I can do that to any of these serving portions. Okay, so you get the picture on that. There's some other features that the programming does, or that the algorithm does. I'm going to show those to you real quick, and then I think we'll be good. So one of the other things I can do is I can resize this meal. Okay, so let's say this meal, instead of 70 grams of protein, I want to go to 100. So you'll see we're at 933 calories. We're now 1,333. Okay, so there's more grams of fat and more grams of carbohydrate. We're still at 100 grams, or now also 100 grams on the protein. Okay. All right, so as you can see, all of our serving portions went up. Our macro composition is as it should be. So that change just caused everything to recalculate. I can also change the macronutrient composition by just going in to this page again. Instead of 30, 30, 40, let's go 40% on the protein, 30 fat, and 30 on the carbohydrate. And as you can see, it adds up to 100%, a little bit smaller meal at 1,000 calories. And we go back to the output page. And we can see we are at 40, 30, 30. We've hit all of our targets here, no variances. And so I can, again, go in and change these serving portions however I want them without impacting the macronutrient composition. I'm going to take this back to where it was, neutral value. Okay. Now I can also add and delete items, and it'll just cause the servings to recalculate, and that will happen within the parameters that we have for our composition here. So you get an idea of what I'm looking for. So just a quick review back here. So I need a nice front end page, or module, however you want to call it, where the user picks which method they want to use percents or use grams. and then alert them here with the text size meal and enter macros, and then instruct them to enter the grams of protein for this meal. They enter that, and then their macronutrient percentages, so you can see how all that works. This has to be an active button, that if this does not equal 100%, that's disabled. Remember that these calculations here are used in the algorithm, okay? And if they decide to use grams instead, then they just enter the grams of each of their macronutrients. And again, remember, if that's the case, then these calculations are used in the servings algorithm, okay? A nice front end here for the entering the food ingredients. We're going to have these broken down by protein, carbohydrate, and added fats. The look and feel should be very similar to what one would expect on a current, calorie tracking app. Okay, should be very, very similar to that. And then on the output, this should be something very, very user friendly. You can read your servings. You can see the table on the output for your individual items. And then this tool, this is an actual tool that they'll use excuse me, to ensure that they've hit their targets. And then if they haven't, these variances will show up, and then they can go in and make the corrections they need to make. Okay. So I just need to know if this is something your company can do. And if so, and if you're interested in this project, just email me back, let me know, and we can talk about next steps. Thank you for your time.